What's up everyone, I'm Damien Reed and this is Race Department. Yes, a new camera angle and hopefully, fingers crossed, my last. Does anyone else do this with a room constantly moving furniture around until eventually you're happy?
Pivot! Pivot! Pivot!
Today's video is a full review of the Thrustmaster T248, but this isn't the right wheelbase, and so through the power of editing... over the top, most likely. Anyway, Thrustmaster have been kind enough to provide the T248 for review, which will be available to buy on October the 21st. It's going to retail here in the UK at £300, 350 euros, or 400 American dollars. The Thrustmaster T248 is compatible with the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 and PC. So let's go through some of the key points and features of the T248. It uses a hybrid drive system, which essentially means it uses pulleys and gears, delivering 70% more power than the Thrustmaster T150. There are magnetic pedals for quick shifting, 25 action buttons, an interactive dashboard which can display speed, RPM, race position, best lap time, as well as loads of other information. There's also on-the-fly force feedback adjustment, and it comes with the Thrustmaster T3PM pedals, which have an adjustable brake pedal. Let's cut to the chase. I'm not a fan of how this wheelbase and wheel look. It's completely plastic. The wheelbase is covered in plastic, the wheel appears to be made of plastic, the desk or rig clamp is plastic, and even the handle to tighten the clamp is made of plastic. It looks cheap, and yes, I know it's an entry or high entry level wheelbase, and if I'm completely honest, I may not have had so much issue with the level of plastic being used if the wheel looked different. I'm not a fan of this brushed aluminium. It's plastic, it looks like plastic, feels like plastic, so Thrustmaster, please embrace the plastic and don't attempt to make it look like anything else. How many times have I said plastic in the last minute? The other thing you'll notice about the T248 is that it's incredibly light, which on one hand is impressive, being 70% more powerful than T150, but it does emphasise this is mostly plastic. There's that word again. If I'm going to be ultra picky, I don't like these toggle switches. There's no reassuring click to them, and due to their location and restrictive movement, they're just screaming to be caught whilst driving. The other thing that struck me is that the T248 is a PlayStation licensed product, but apart from the buttons, or the controller style buttons, and the PlayStation button itself, there's nothing about the design that screams PlayStation. To sum up my thoughts on how this looks and feels, if there wasn't an LCD screen, I would have guessed the T248 was designed 5 to 7 years ago. There's nothing about the design that is representative of the sim racing market in the year 2021. My god, Damien, is there anything positive you're going to say about the T248? Well, yes, there actually is. Having 25 buttons at your fingertips is pretty darn impressive. With other entry-level wheels, I've struggled in the past to get all functionality of sim functions onto the wheel. At some point, you kind of have to say, okay, I'll leave that function off. Not with the T248. Initially, I thought the LCD screen was a gimmick, something that I wouldn't use, and for the first few drives, I didn't have it turned on at all. Once switched on though, it makes the driving experience way more immersive. Whilst I probably won't use the features like best lap time or race position, having a digital RPM is pretty cool. Switching between the LCD screens is really simple, and having the on-the-fly option to change FFB is something not to be sniffed at. I mentioned earlier that the toggle switches were a bit meh, but the rest of the buttons are absolutely fine. The wheel itself is a bit on the small side, but feels totally fine, and the squidgy exterior is also a nice touch. I don't have the equivalent Logitech wheel to compare this to, but I do have a Thrustmaster TMX Pro, which is essentially the T150. Now remember, Thrustmaster states the T248 is 70% more powerful than T150, and my god, the difference between the two is extraordinary. The difference in raw power was not what I was expecting. Switch between the two wheelbases felt like the TMX Pro was turned off or faulty. Admittedly, I've driven a couple of thousand sim hours with the TMX Pro, so it's probably not a true representation between the two, but there's no way the TMX Pro felt like this out of the box. The rumble from the roads, bumps from curbs and the very rare adventure off-road are all translated to driver very well. Whilst not as light as a direct drive wheelbase, it's still relatively smooth for a wheelbase with gears and pulleys, and is extremely quick to provide you, the driver, with enough information to catch the back end if you need to. I do a lot. The T248 loads up well in corners. The level of power is easy enough to understand what your cars you are driving are doing. You can feel the rear of your car going light, shifts in weight, tyre compression. Yeah, I'm really impressed. I love these pedals. But before I go on to tell you why these pedals are so good, there's two massive issues that I need you to understand. I've tried these pedals on both carpet and laminated floors and they move. They move a lot. If you can perch something behind them, great, but if you were planning to buy this wheelbase and where you were going to sit at your desk, there's no scope to place something behind them, you'll have to find some other way to make sure they don't move. The second issue is that out of the box the brake pedal is too stiff for consumers who will be using these pedals on the floor, because not only do they slide, smashing the brake pedal makes them tip forward. You can probably counteract these two issues by adjusting the brake pedal to its lightest setting, but then you'll lose the stiffness and brake feel from the brake pedal. Anyway, I said I love these pedals, and it's because of the adjustable brake. If you have the T150 Pro or TMX Pro, you would have got the Thrustmaster T3PA pedals. These pedals are inferior to the T3PM pedals in almost every way. They look better, appear to be sturdier, have an incredibly smooth clutch and throttle pedals, and of course the adjustable brake pedal. There's two springs and a rubber bung which gives you the freedom of 4 levels of tension. After a quick test, I went straight for the hardest option, where I've been using them without any issue for the last week. There are going to be some of you that will slam Thrustmaster and the T248 for not being direct drive, because since the CSL DD was announced, many of you have had direct drive fever. There is a lot that I don't like about the T248. There's too much plastic, the paddle shifters are way too noisy, and the pedals can't be used on the floor without some kind of modification. But let's just be realistic for a second. For £300 you get a wheelbase, wheel, LCD screen and pedals with an adjustable brake. For this price, I don't believe there's a better wheelbase at the moment. I've been Damien Reed. See you soon.